And we are live with our 38th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Hey, everybody. Welcome once again. We're now 38 episodes in. So I finally feel like we have momentum, but for some reason, Ken decided not to dress up this week. So at least we'll have a serious discussion. It's going to be very, very professional, especially as we're joined by Matt Konda this week. Matt is an all-around great guy. He's been on the board of OWASP for a number of years. He's currently the CEO of Jemurai. Is that what we decided? Jemurai. Dang it. I almost got it. Sorry about that, Matt.
Which we're going to ask him about that name. But
yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's great to have everybody back once again. There's a lot to talk about this week. There's been a couple of cool announcements and events that have happened. I mean, we've got AWS that's running a reInvent that's running right now as well. So there's stuff coming out of there. So if you've got questions, feel free to hit us up on Slack, Twitter, or even email us. I would love to, or on the YouTube page, of course, as always. Ken, did you have anything else you wanted to add here at the beginning?
No, just I think you covered it. Matt's also done a lot of speaking. The Glue tool, that's something that Matt works on that's open source. Just all around, I've known Matt for a while now. And he's always trying to improve OWASP and AppSec in general. So glad that he could join us. And we're about to get into a topic where he can kind of talk to sort of what happened. So, I mean, Seth, did you actually catch up did you have a chance to see the event stream flat map thing unfold?
Yeah, I followed it a little bit. So this is basically our AppSec minute for this week. It really has to go along with trusting third-party libraries, right? I mean, we've got the OWASP. I can't remember which number it is. Matt could probably tell us, right, Matt?
A9.
A9. There you go. OWASP A9, which is third-party libraries and insecure configurations or untrusted content, whatever you want to call it.
Components or something like that.
Yeah, there you go. Components. But
components with known vulnerabilities.
There you go. Yeah, using components with known vulnerabilities. Got it. I knew it was in there. I always just go to Google and pull it down when I add it, right? So
it's required reading if you want to be on the board. No, I'm just kidding.
It is required reading. You have to have them memorized. Is that the first test? It's
people tend to notice if you don't know what you're talking about.
I just disqualified myself. I'll try again later. Dang it. So I followed it a little bit, but I've been really heads down. I mean, this is fourth quarter for consultants, and so I'm really just trying to survive day to day at this point. Make sure I get all the work done that needs to be done, and fend off the people that want work for less than they should ask for it at this time of year. So, I mean, Ken, you've been following pretty closely. It sounds like Matt, you have as well. Matt, do you want to kind of give us a rundown of what exactly happened?
Sure. And I think it's interesting. So first of all, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I'm excited. I appreciate the acknowledgement.
Thanks for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting about this is I would actually maybe split hairs around whether this is actually A9 or not, because I think of A9 as being like, hey, you're using old struts, and we all know struts has a vulnerability, right? Whereas so what happened in this case was that there's a library called Event Stream, and somebody who wanted to subvert that project got themselves access as a committer. They basically asked in an email like, hey, or GitHub, like, can I become a committer? And the person who was maintaining it was not actively maintaining it anymore and said, yeah, sure, you can be a committer. And the person committed something that was actually kind of subtle. It was this library flat map stream, which they introduced with an interesting sort of series of steps. There was a vulnerability in it, and they released it with source code and mapped to that. And then they fixed the vulnerability in source code. So if you went and looked at source code, it would be fixed. But the dependency was old. And so this event stream was depending on this older flat map stream that basically had a backdoor in it. If you think it's like running code that you don't intend, and it got included in a Bitcoin wallet, which is why people started to really care. But in this case, this is a library that people didn't even realize they were importing, and so it raises kind of different questions to me than A9, where A9 is like you just didn't even check that you're using something really old. This is more like, how do you manage an ecosystem with thousands of libraries that you have to use open source, but you can't trust everything? Like, how do you set the bar? Is it Apache okay, but something else isn't? How do you make those kinds of decisions? You use a curated repository. We've seen that where people say, hey, we're only going to trust libraries that come out of this repo where we've reviewed the source code and put it there. But that slows you down in lots of ways because you don't get updates until your team has time to review that code.
Plus if security vulnerabilities are uncovered later, then you've got this old outdated version of that vendor dependency that you now have to rely on patching.
Right.
Good luck.
Right. So it's like these A9 vendors are going to stand up, I won't name names, but they're going to stand up and be like, oh, we would have protected you from that. But like, they only protect you from that after somebody knows about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always been like one of my issues. Like, I mean, we've got NPM audit now, right? Which was used to be what NSP, which I think even came from Retire.js or something, right? But that was always and that's always been kind of my take on that whole thing. Is it's great for another check, as far as, hey, we want to make sure that we don't run anything that we obviously know is outdated, but there's no way that it can prevent malicious code from being inserted in there or any sort of active attack. I mean, this whole event stream issue really harkens back to the, what was it, that left-hand issue that we had a few years back where the maintainer just was like, screw it, I'm out, took it down, and it crashed all those projects because everybody depended on it, right? It was like 5 lines of code. And like you could almost see something like event stream coming because of what happened there, right? And then even at that point, right, Ken, didn't we talk about there was the blog post where the guy did actually talk about inserting himself into Node projects, like Node open source projects?
Yeah, I think it was NPM. I don't think it was Matt. Hey, I just realized, Matt, for once I have somebody who actually does like Ruby and Rails security work, and like I'm not alone on this podcast for once. I'm always the outcast. Not tonight.
Not tonight.
There's at least 2 of us. I put in my solution, by the way, to fix this sort of situation. It's called No Code by Kelsey Hightower. Write nothing, deploy nothing.
I seem to remember that one, right? So, I mean, along those lines, right? So what is the fix been then that you've seen deployed? I mean, is it people just rolling back to a previous version, or has it been updated? Like honestly, I haven't paid too much attention to it.
There's an update that removes that dependency. So if you update event stream, that dependency will go away.
Okay.
We have a couple Node projects, which kind of hurts my soul a little bit because I'm really a Ruby person, but my team likes Node, so we do things in Node now. And
so now you live in callback hell.
Oh, it's really sad, actually, how bad I am at that. Like, why are there promises and async and all this stuff? Like, come on, like, can't I just write, But I get it. There's benefits to it. I just have to spend more time in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been using TypeScript a lot, which I actually like. Gives you a little bit more structure.
TypeScript's a better way to, or I should say, syntactically, the way it visually looks and is written, to me, is more appealing than just straight out JavaScript. I do like TypeScript, and I think you can't you interchange, like write both TypeScript and convert back to JavaScript if you wanted to in the same app? I thought that was possible.
You can, yeah. But it's basically the same ecosystem, right? So I just the other day wrote a Visual Studio Code extension to do like assisted security code review. Basically, it'll find candidate issues. So while you're looking at source code, it's like, oh, your errors, and it's like looking for the same things I grab for every time I do a code review. And it was really cool and easy to write. There's a whole platform for that built into code, that VS Code tool. But with 5 explicit dependencies on my main project, I had 900 transitive dependencies in my node project.
900 and
900
off
like
5. So you installed 5 node libraries, and out of that, there were 900 attached to that.
And I mean, our tool, our tool that we're building, and I don't know if we'll talk about it or not, has over 3,000, right? It's, I mean, I thought 70 or 90 was a lot, but when you have 3,000 dependencies, it becomes a whole different challenge. And I think one of the things that would be really interesting to talk about, although I don't have any answers, is like just complexity in security, right? I mean, we have all these really advanced tools in specific areas, but it feels like we keep falling down because there's so much complexity. Like solving the actual problems are hard. It takes a lot of work to go from, hey, I have an idea that's right, to we're doing it right.
Yeah, right now it's sort of that like freedom does not equal safety type of situation where, you know, if you want to have the freedom to write flexible applications that have a bunch of libraries that you can, you know, shortcut doing that yourself, and you can rely on these other libraries, then you have to acknowledge that, you know, you're going to lose a bit of safety because there is no, I mean, that's really there's no perfect solution right now, right? I mean, it's like you said, because then it's anything you do is going to be after the fact, right? Like you said, it's got to be a known. Well, actually, I wonder if any of these vendors actually do like internal research on any of these. But even so, like I guess even if they did internal research on these libraries, it's not like they could do that on every single library that's out there. It'd have to be very specific. I'm guessing if that does happen, it's based off of like how often it's used.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just the issue, right? If you go into like that package count website, right, and just look at NPM or by itself, you're talking probably almost 1,000 packages a day that are uploaded that are new. But I mean, you know, like Matt, your team, you know, 3,000 packages just tracking what's changed on a daily basis is a job in and of itself. Not even, you know, talking about what those changes are and whether or not it affects the security of an application, but just tracking the changes is difficult enough.
Well, and that points to a problem that I end up talking about a lot with developers, which is like, hey, you need to keep your dependencies updated in general, because what happens is you don't, like I never did. I wrote a bunch of code. It's like, you know, wrote to an API, and then 2 years later, I hadn't updated this dependency because why would I? I break things, right? And I've been burned by the other side of that. I had a Hibernate issue once where an integer, an ID used to be an integer in Hibernate, and then it became a long, and all my code just broke. And I didn't realize that was happening, right? I had to go change a bunch of code to make it work again. And that was a really minor change. It wasn't like a signature change, it was just a type, right? But if you don't stay updated, then the API signatures for all the methods you use they sort of grow apart, right? And so it just gets harder and harder to update as a developer the longer you wait.
Oh, yeah.
You don't get paid for it, right? You don't get nobody's like, oh wow, you're so great, you stayed up to date.
Yeah, I mean, I've had those same problems, right? Like, so maintaining the hacker tracker stuff for DEF CON, like if I let it sit, you know, 8 months and then try and come back to it, I'm like, oh crap, now it's a new version of Swift. I've got to support the new APIs in 12 dot whatever, and you know, it's easier for me to make an update every like month to 2 months just to maintain that cadence, so that when I come back to it, it's not a huge effort to get it up to date, right, and make sure that it all works. So I can only imagine, and that's just a small project. That's pretty easy to maintain and do, like even with those pain points. But something that customers are depending on, or open source libraries you're not maintaining anymore, I totally get that. Main developers like, hey, somebody else wants to take this, go for it, right?
Yeah.
I've had those moments.
Yeah.
I've had those moments in the last 6 months, we'll say, where I'm like, if somebody came right now and was like, I'll take over, for example, RailsGoat, like if someone's like, I really want to take over that project for OWASP, I would definitely be like, well, I would vet them a little bit better than just, you know, the way this went down, obviously. But yeah, I mean, that there's, if you've ever had a long running open source project, like, that there's just, you get bored with it after a while, or you get distracted or whatever the case is, and you're like happy if somebody's willing to take it over.
That is such a good segue to Glue. I don't know if you even know this, but there's another leader on Glue now, and he just started committing. I mean, one of the best things that can happen in open source, right, is when people start helping you and contributing and putting in energy and making your tools better, right? And it makes you feel so good that there's like validation from other people who are contributing to the project. And so I had a similar thing to what you're describing that you want to have happen with Girl Scout. This guy was like, hey, I'd like to help. And so he started doing commits, and we ended up, like, after a while, getting to the point where, okay, cool, he's legitimately contributing, he's got a vision. I'm pretty busy with the board stuff. Let's let him run with it. I'm only slowing him down at this point. And I felt like, wow, that's success right there. Like, that project came, and now Omer Hevroni in Israel is running that project, basically, right? I'm helping, but he's like really the point person. It's just awesome. It's a great feeling.
That's pretty, yeah. And what made you, I mean, like, what was the impetus for you to build the Glue tool in the beginning? Or, yes, that's what I meant.
So, interestingly, as most tools happen, there's a need, right? And when we first started working on Glue, we were doing a lot of work with Rails apps. And at the time, Bundler Audit and Brakeman were awesome tools, but they weren't, and they both ran very easily. But we had 1,000 repositories at this client, and it was not going to be something where we could go just like get each dev to run it, right? We had to come up with a better solution for that. And we wanted to be able to integrate the output into something like Jira, or like we wanted the output of those tools to go somewhere where we could track and resolve it. And so that was really the simplest use case that we started with, was let's run Bundler Audit in Glue, and then let's put the stuff in Jira. And what we realized, and we didn't really talk about how I got into security, but like, I wrote software for a long time before I ever touched security. And what I sort of looked at was, hey, this is not Brakeman isn't unique from, Bandit isn't unique from, Checkmarks. I mean, they're obviously different tools, but they're doing something. And if we can abstract what they're doing, we can make it easier for people to use them. And a lot of people set out to write cool security tools, and they're like, oh, I'm going to write this thing and hack this thing or do this thing. And I mean, which is awesome. That drives things forward. I totally respect it, and I'm not knocking it. But it's sort of not something that gets a spotlight. It's like, how easy is it to use the tool, right? How does it integrate into your CI/CD? How does it, et cetera, right? So 4 years ago, we were early on thinking about that, right? Like, there were people doing it, don't get me wrong, but like, it wasn't, now everybody's like, DevOps, you have to be doing that. But Glue was kind of like, hey, if I'm running Jenkins or Travis or whatever, and I just want to have security stuff happen, let's do it in Glue and abstract it, right? And we realized that, this is one of the reasons I love Ruby, is it's just so easy to write a task. I don't know if you saw this, but at AppSec USA, I did a project talk where in half an hour we wrote a whole new task for Glue, where we integrated a new open source security tool, like all the way front to back, right? It was like,
you did that live?
Yeah, like we live coded it in the session. It was awesome. I mean, I had obviously prepared. I knew what I was going to do. I'm not saying
right. No, but there is some level of chance to that with demo gods and whatnot. But that's pretty cool. Yeah, Ruby is very flexible. Seth, very cool. People love it.
Easy to read.
People love it. Yeah. I do remember programming Ruby at some point, right? But and then I saw the light, moved over to Python, and now I've got to move to Go apparently, because that's what all the cool kids are doing, right?
That does seem to be what the cool kids are doing.
Mm-hmm. No, but you're right with like for instance, with Brakeman, one of the distinctions with Brakeman was that it was easy to run for like developers, and I think that's part of why it like caught on. I mean, it works well, but in terms of like just easeability and like you said, both running it just as a developer with, well, you had mentioned the pipeline. So like as a developer, you can easily run it on your box. You don't need to like have any special security knowledge, but also like you can put that in a pipeline and put it in as part of your like you said, Jenkins testing, and it's just easy. And now you see like, Fortify and what's the other one? We talk about it all the time. what's the
AppScan.
app scan source? Like all these tools have built in like plugins, or I think Vericode's got one. You put it into like, they've got like Jenkins plugins and CI plugins now for that reason. Everybody's kind of realized that's where it's got to go. So it makes sense to like make it easy to actually get up and running and going, because that kind of like appeal, well, it's what makes people want to use your tool. So
in my experience, and this is not a knock on those vendors, and I think a lot of them are moving toward using APIs and providing APIs and integrating with Jenkins and so forth. Like that's a direction people are moving if they haven't moved there already. But the fact of the matter is, like, a lot of that is still clunky. Like I've seen developers take a couple weeks to do one of these integrations, right? Because there's a bunch of issues. You have to use this vendor's jar file to be able to communicate with their server. Like it's not like, oh, there's just a REST API I interact with for a lot of the security vendors. And I think that's something that I would like to see us push. And it's actually why something like, I have this OWASP project called OFF, which is like an open finding format. And the idea would be like, how can we standardize some of these, what you get back and forth when you interact with security tools, so that, as a developer, I don't have to write a new thing just to integrate. I'm switching static analysis tools. I don't have to integrate I don't have to redo my dashboard. I can just plug in the new one. That makes sense? I make it sound easy, and I know it's not. I'm not trying to.
Yeah. No. It is. I came up from a dev background as well, Matt, and we'll get into that here in a minute, because I do want to kind of hear your origin story and how you made your way into security. But that's always been frustrating to me, is the way security tools in general are not focused on usability or maintainability. It's all, hey, what cool thing can I do? At least with like Metasploit, you've got a standard. They've got a way that you write, your exploit, so it can plug into it. HD has done a great job with that and forcing that kind of to, as the standard in that exploitation space. But on the AppSec side, or even just on the finding side and how we consume and use those tools, it's just so all over the board, right? You've got one that uses a command line. You've got another that's a web interface that it spins up on port 3000, right? It's some node tool. You've got an Electron app. You've got, and it's all, okay, how do you pull this all together to actually get usable data out of it that you can provide actionable intelligence to the people that really care about security? Because that's just it. You're not going to find an executive out there that's willing to go run a command line and dump, the tool data. Or even if you dump him that tool data, they don't care, right? As much as the security people are going to poo-poo a dashboard, that's what you need, is something that'll tell you exactly what's going on, what your security posture is, what the risk is to the organization. That's what pays the bills, and that's what keeps us employed. Sorry, I kind of went off there, but I definitely see, I haven't played much with Glue yet, and maybe if you don't mind, kind of give us an introduction to what it is, and we've kind of backed our way into it, but give us kind of the high level overview of what you use it for.
Well, so basically, it's actually in certain ways inspired by Brakeman. If you actually go look at code, there's Justin definitely had a strong influence on us in terms of how we built it. But it's basically trying to abstract what tools are running and what you want to do with findings once you run a tool into a process, so that you can have that be standard and just plug in new tools as you go. So for example, we define tasks, and tasks can be either, we also started with analyzing AMIs, and in some ways I feel like we should circle back and look at Docker images now, but we haven't done that. But there are certain things you look at on the file system. You run ClamAV, you run hashkey, you do something to do like, hey, we want to look at a file system and see what's changed or if everything's okay. And then there's code level tasks where you're running static analysis or secrets analysis or dependency analysis. So retire OWASP dependency check. There's security check, which is a Python library. A bunch of different things, usually open source. But those are all sort of code analysis tools. And then there's a live stage where we run, you can actually drive Zap through its API. Now, I just want to say out loud, that particular integration has not been worked on for a little while, so I don't want you to go be all excited about it. But the idea is you can plug in the URL, it'll go run the scan, and then at the end of any of those, you get this bucket of findings. It's a list or a collection of findings, which is a standardized format, which we've abstracted from whatever that tool did, right? It's XML, JSON, whatever it is, we standardize it into a object type that we can now parse. Then we have the idea of filters, because usually most tools produce a lot of false positives. So the idea is you could have an extensible spot where you could say, hey, you know what? I know I only ever want to see one X-frame options issue from Zap because it's going to give me one for every different page that returns without a header set. And I really only care about that once because I'm going to set it in my web server and be done, right? And then a reporting tier where whatever you have left in your collection gets pushed wherever you want to send it. So it could be CSV, it could be JSON, it could be Jira, Pivotal. I want to say Omer, one of the things he did was put it into the Microsoft tool set, which is like Team Foundation servers, I think, right? So the idea is to abstract like where you want the data to go and what tools are running so that that process is easier to manage, which is why it's called glue. It's kind of the glue process that holds everything together.
Yeah.
What do you think it would take to get, I know it's like kind of for the OFF, for that file format that you had mentioned, you know, like what would be the roadblocks to getting some adoption there? Like are vendors incentivized to, I mean, obviously when you write support for any particular, like it's JSON or XML or CSV, like there's some time spent on that. So maybe that's,
I guess they're really incentive. I think that's the problem actually, right? So I think when a vendor comes in, they want you to use their dashboard and like, not rightfully so, but understandably so, right? Like they're not sticky if you're not using and don't know you're using their tool, right? If they're just like something that plugs in the background, that's not really where they want to play. So most vendors want you to be using their UI, which is why I suspect that those integration points don't get a deep investment. If we had, and this is an idea we've thought about doing, but we've never had time to do, if we had like an open security dashboard, you know, take Defect Dojo and put it on steroids or something like that, something like really neat that you could just ingest stuff into. Now, and you were driving to use that, now vendors might have a reason to expose that so that it'd be easier to get it in, right?
Yeah,
but there are also other successful, just to briefly acknowledge Dan Cornell and ThreadFix, right? Because that's a related sort of tool where they're synchronizing their data and pushing it into a place as well. Slightly different place in the architecture, right? Like they're ingesting the output of the different tools. They're not really running the tools, but it's obviously a problem, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Defect Dojo. No, just along those lines, right? Like I can see where it's fitting because Defect Dojo does have some of those same traits. Like it'll go out and run different tools like a Nessus or something like that, ingest that data. But as the more that I've used Defect Dojo and we've been trying to implement it with, some customers that I've been dealing with, you can tell that it's pretty immature. And again, it's built by security people, right? And it's got a ways to go. So we've been talking about, all right, as we make improvements, we're going to be pushing these back into the tree and back into the open source repo, just because we may as well give back, and that's what the customer wants as well. But at the same time, I feel like there's a great like kind of integration point between Glue and that, right? I know Matt talked about his whole the AppSec pipeline project as well. I mean, so are you working with him from a Glue perspective on that, to kind of integrate all of those pieces together?
Well, it sounds like you kind of handed it off though.
Well, I still work on it. I think, so I don't want it to sound like I'm not doing it. It was more I'm not actually probably writing the most code for it now, but I still write code. I think it's a good question. And, we've sort of experienced one of the classic problems with open source and OWASP as the answer to that question, right? It's like, hey, I'm interested in this thing. Here's my vision for how I can fix it. I'm going to go, right? Matt's got his vision for how he's going to fix it. Like, we're both smart, but we can't necessarily get to, and I have a ton of respect for Matt T. Like, I'm absolutely acknowledge it. And I like point to him when I talk about the pipeline and all that. But like our vision for how that actually works is a little different. And I don't know that he has he's got, I don't know that his tools fit exactly the same way that I think they should, right? And again, I'm not critiquing him. I'm just saying we have slightly different visions of the world.
Yeah, nobody's going to build the same thing, the same. You could give three people, all the same objective, and they're going to build it three different ways, right? It's not,
right.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, again, not to segue into OWASP talk, but like that is a challenge that it's both a challenge and a blessing that the OWASP community has, right? We have lots of great people who are doing interesting work, right? As a newcomer from the outside, it's sometimes hard to know what the most relevant projects are, right? And that's where we came up with that sort of flagship lab incubator concept, was to try to help people more easily navigate that. But the fact of the matter is there's lots of good projects. I mean, Glue was an incubator project for 2-3 years because I was like, well, I don't need money, so I don't have the incentive to do that work to go get it promoted. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'll pause and redirect where you're interested.
Since you're talking about OWASP, I have some questions about OWASP, but I think that we probably should get to your backstory first, so we don't run out of time, basically. Because for those who may have joined after the intro, Matt runs his own company. He's also on the board of Jemurai, by the way, and he's also on the OWASP board of directors. So your company does training, but it also builds products. And so you're to me, you've always been sort of a person focused on the AppSec solutions, like building things to fix things versus I've never, I don't know if you guys do services, but I've always thought of you as more leaning towards building like actual engineering, like solutions rather than, do you guys do services?
We do services. A lot of them we try to target into sort of custom development around security features. So if you need to do like a lot of companies, not a lot, we're small. So to say a lot of companies use us to do this would be totally wrong. But, an example might be, we want to make sure that we see what's happening in the application, kind of like App Sensor, but like we want to customize that and build it into our app so that, we're seeing when failed logins happen, when, things that are not implicitly visible just because you're coding on a certain framework, right? So we'll drop it in and we build
product security type of work.
Yeah, and we usually work, we love working with startups because that's kind of our people in a sense, if you know what I mean. Like we're small and hungry and trying new things all the time and learning different technologies and playing with Docker and Kubernetes and this thing and that thing. And so it's fun for us to get to work with companies that are also sort of adopting technology quickly. When we started, it was a lot about doing Agile because a lot of people weren't really doing Agile yet, didn't know how to do Agile with security because it felt like you're just taking the training wheels off and going, and like there's no control over what's happening in your process. And now people have come to terms with, oh, wait, if we just do Agile correctly and we talk about security when we talk about our features, we can do okay, right? So I think it's become a very accepted, like, oh, okay, yeah, you can do Agile and be secure. But, 7 years ago when I started the company, we didn't necessarily think that was where people were, right? In particular, the security community was not there. They were like, wait, we need this like week-long window where we do our pen test and our static analysis and all this stuff. And then you need another 2-week window to fix everything. You know what I mean? Like, that's how this works.
Yeah. So you've got this background in development. You own your own startup. Actually every time I talk to you, you're always on the road doing something. Like you're always busy. But clearly like you've you're speaking, you're growing your company, you're doing all these things. Like what got you there? Let's talk about your origin story. Like first of all, the one thing I always want to figure out from people, I think, Seth and I both always like to know, like, at what point in your life did you think security, was for me, and then why, but also like, just how you got into this, into where you're at now.
Yeah, I love telling this story and I think it's fun, but I don't know if other people are interested. So I don't like to necessarily hit them over the head with it. But so I guess the easy way to start the story is I'm super interested in math. My dad was a math professor, so I got interested in the math behind cryptography before I understood anything about anything else in security. And I ended up doing a master's degree in computer science and focused on security at that time. Wrote a thesis paper about like distributed object security. So like if you were serializing objects and sending them around the wire, how would you know you could trust them and so forth. And this was, maybe a little bit before Corvo was like widely used, but like definitely object serialization and stuff like that was not something that you saw frequently. But when I finished, it was kind of like, to go into security, you sort of were basically saying you're going to go be a sysadmin, which nothing against sysadmins, but like there wasn't a development aspect to it. And so I kind of lost that trail.
And going from like mathematics and cryptography and, going after your master's, like that's got to be quite a switch to think about doing like, Linux updates or whatever, Windows updates, whatever the case is.
Go install a VA product, virus.
There's more to it than that. I don't want to offend people. I'm just saying like, obviously some of the challenges can be a little bit more complicated in terms of like cryptography.
I always love producing something and solving a problem in a way, and what I've loved about coding is that you can tell you've solved the problem, right? You can run it and it worked. So I spent, over a decade doing analytics and business intelligence and different kinds of, business applications. And then I went and I followed somebody who was formerly the CTO of a company called Redpoint Technologies.
That's Seth's name of his LLC. So
yeah,
which has to do with climbing, right? That's the analogy.
Yes, yeah, yep, it does. Yeah, it's lead climbing. We could get into it, but we don't need to. So
when's the last time you went climbing, Seth? Not to be like,
hey, jerk. Let's just
a total asshole.
Let's see. Yeah, it's been a while. It's probably. I was in a gym probably about a year ago, but it's been a long time. That was more college days for me. So
I gotcha.
So I followed the guy who was the CTO at this Redpoint company to a security company called Trustwave, which you can see if you look at my background. And I joined engineering there. So I was not actually part of the cool Spider Labs group. So there was at that time, Nick Prococo ran Spider Labs, and they were doing 20 plus talks at DEF CON and a couple at Black Hat every year. And so I went along with them, and there was a guy, John Rose, who really sort of showed me, like, I remember walking into a hotel room at one of the, can't remember which one it was, and Fyodor of Nmap fame is sitting there, we're just chatting. And, I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, there's all these hardcore people, and you can just walk in and talk to them, because at that time, the field was like, I think maybe more open. Maybe it's still open, I don't know. But we kind of got into it, and John was really the one, and I got to give him credit, he's really the one who kind of got me into security. And we did this talk called Builders versus Breakers. And so I was building these apps that were like running scans, running a CA, running a bunch of different products, right? And so our job there was to scale up and build the product infrastructure, right? So, whatever you think of their products, that's not necessarily my point. But we did a lot of.
I don't know their products, to be honest with you, so yeah. I'm totally unbiased. I don't know what.
I'm not trying to provide commentary. I'm just saying we built a lot of the infrastructure, and it was interesting work and all that. But we had Spider Labs folks come and pen test our stuff and break my apps left and right, And they thought of things I never thought of. They found things that I should have thought of, right? There are a lot of things that I learned from having the apps broken that way. And that kind of inspired this Builders versus Breakers talk, which John and I did, I think, at AppSec USA in Austin in 2012 or something like that, right? So we fought, basically. He played the role of the pen tester, I played the role of the developer. He's like, you're stupid. I was like, but I'm not incented to write secure code. Like, nobody knows, nobody cares. He's like, but you can't do it. Everybody needs you to be responsible. And I'm like, well, but where's the line? Like, I could write extremely secure code, or I could write sort of secure code. Like, where do you want that line to be, right? And like, we were trying to make the argument of like, nobody really knows what to do for security, right? Like, even if we were trained, there's no like clear, you should always do this, right?
No, I feel like it's the same way with assessments. Like,
yeah,
do you want an ultra secure assessment? Because if you want that, that's going to cost you. That's going to cost you more than you're likely willing to pay. But do you want to sort of secure? Like, we covered the big bases. Sure, we can do that.
Right.
Same deal.
Right. And so then eventually, after a couple of years there, and getting to know a bunch of the pen testers in that group who, have helped me a lot. I split off on my own in 2012 to basically, at the end of 2012, to basically start trying to focus on helping developers. Like, my goal was to seek out developers and figure out how to teach them security, which is why we do a lot of training. It's also why we do a lot of work with like coding with libraries that developers end up using, right? We're trying to make it easy for them to do the right thing, kind of thing. In fact, we're trying to figure out how we can open source some of the things we've been doing. It's just tricky because there's like tentacles into client work, right? And so it's hard to know, like we have to kind of clear a bunch of people to be able to make that all happen. But that's kind of the origin story, it's like, got shown that I was not actually that good at this. Thought I was a pretty decent developer, but like realized, okay, I still don't know a lot of things. And, sort of wanted to go. I remember the first time I heard about the OWASP top 10, which, I mean, you'll laugh because this is actually, considering I made it to the board of OWASP, like I should have heard of the OWASP top 10 in like 2005 or something, right? But like the fact of the matter was probably like 2010 or 2011 that I first heard about the OWASP top 10. And I remember doing a survey of like 200 developers that I knew in Chicago. So I used to live in Chicago, I live in Dallas now, but I did a survey of all these people in Chicago and I said, hey, how many of you know about the OWASP top 10? And it was like less than 3% at that time, right? It was amazing how low that was. And so I basically said, hey, I would like to get more deeply involved with OWASP. I think OWASP is great, but like what we need to do is actually bridge over to this developer community. And I'll be blunt, I was very like political about it. I went to people who were prominent in Chicago, people who were prominent in other places and said, hey, I want to go on the board, I want to do this, will you support me? And they did, and that really helped me run for the board and try to bring this developer message to OWASP. And I mean,
no, I
feel like I've done all the right stuff to a certain extent, but I actually feel like I failed in a lot of ways because my goals were so much higher, and we've been able to, like, we've seen lots of new challenges with OWASP. We've lost 2 EDs. We've had.
Yeah, is that a touchy subject that we shouldn't talk about? Because I definitely wanted to ask, but like, part of me is like, I don't know if he wants to talk about that on.
You can talk about it.
What's that?
You can talk about it.
Well, I guess the only reason I was going to ask was because I got I won't say people's names, but I got contacted over the summer to for the sort of what you're talking about, just like for opinions on where OWASP can go, and we got this new director, and like this is the we're trying to tackle these challenges, and so like I wrote back this like fairly lengthy thought out email about stuff, and it's like, then fast forward to like this month, was it this month, where that new director's gone, and it's like, makes me wonder like if it's difficult for people to, if like, I guess if it's not the same person in charge, does it make gaining traction difficult? And also, is it that, I wonder with that position, like, because OWASP is it's made up of so many people and it is so far reaching now, if it's not just such a challenge that like maybe that's why turnover is a bit higher than you might expect. I actually don't know the answers. These are just questions that I have, I guess.
Yeah, I think they're really good questions, and I think the fairest way to answer that question, so the current ED, whose last day I think is Friday, we selected as someone who was outside of the industry to come in and help us think in new ways and recruit into new different arenas, get people in industry more involved, formalize our conference space. She had tons of experience with running large events. We thought that there would be a number of things that would sort of be smoother with that. And, I was part of the board that decided to hire her, and we thought that was a good direction for OWASP at that time. And I honestly think she did everything she could have. Like, I don't want to fault her. We've not necessarily agreed on everything, but I don't think that it was like categorically a problem. I think it turned out that she just had other, like, she really did the travel and park type of, like she had a niche, and I think she didn't realize how much she'd be able to leverage that niche when she went back to it. And so,
I know it's a tough. It's a tough.
No. I think we reached a little bit. We reached a little bit to try for something, and it was more risky maybe than we realized. I think it's fair, right? We were trying to get someone who was a little bit more not business oriented, because we definitely want the open part of the community, but someone who could lead us into, figuring out how to do a bigger budget, a bigger strategy, a bigger nonprofit world, right? Like, I mean, and just being blunt, right? Look at PCI Council, ISC2, right? Like, and it's not that we want to be like ISC2, but their revenue dwarfs ours, like ridiculously dwarfs ours, right? But a lot of people feel very passionate about the OWASP community, right? So how do you figure out how to keep that passion and like absolutely keep our values, but figure out how to have a broader impact, right? If you look at the industry, security is becoming a very prominent thing people care a lot about. If OWASP doesn't grow, it's kind of a failure. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, no. Well, and the thing is, like, too, is that I've had this conversation where it's like, well, OWASP is there's people that are pro OWASP, there are people that are like, oh, there needs to be this, that, and the other. And like my take on it is, it's kind of what you said back when you first learned about the OWASP top 10. How many developers knew about the OWASP top 10 then, and how many know about it now? Almost all the time when I talk to developers, they have at least heard of the OWASP organization, if not the OWASP top 10. So clearly something's working there. Well, now we need an organization that advocates for these projects, for collecting, for being a collective body of, just a source of knowledge and cheat sheets and guides and things like that, right? So cool. Like, what's the response? Like, do you just, you can't, I mean, what are you gonna do? Like, say like, oh, you know what, throw out everything OWASP's ever done and we'll go down a different road. And how are you not gonna end up in the same place? You're going backwards. At least this is the one thing I'll say is, like, at least with OWASP, it's not doing the same thing. Like you said, you took a risk. Well, that's fine. I mean, that's good, because you don't want the same, and like, not to, we've had in the past, and I know I'm ranting here, but I know in the past we've had situations where there's like been called to the carpet, hey, this is like vendor influence here, and those people like had tentacles into OWASP and all that. Regardless of how you feel about it, the fact that you're bringing somebody from completely outside the industry, trying something completely new shows that, risks have their downsides. They have their upsides as well, but at least it's not the same old people running things. So I guess that's my long-winded way of saying, like, cool, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet, right? Like, it's going to happen, but it's worth it.
My net takeaway is that there's not a better community that I'm part of, like in security or out of security, like with developers, with like the Ruby community is great. The OWASP community is great. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm sure you've been involved with the Ruby community. Like, they're just a cool group of people, right?
Yeah, it's a great group of people. Yeah.
Right. OWASP is like that to me. And the people who run the chapters, the people who run projects are amazing, amazing people, right? And there's nothing that we can do. That's like one of the great things about it. There's nothing that we can do that's going to actually really damage them, right? Like we think, oh, we're on the board, we're these prominent people, blah, 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 blah. But like, the beauty of the whole model is we can't mess it up.
Yeah, it's completely distributed.
It's all these great people, right, contributing. And so I look at it as, hey, our job is to do everything we can to make it easier for those people, right? And it's frustrating because, we have to have a bureaucracy to spend money. Like, I was just dealing with something for, one of the major project maintainers wants to get reimbursed for something. And like, of course they should, but the check didn't get mailed. So how do we track that down? And it's a pain in the butt. And it's like that shouldn't be something that anybody worries about, them or us, in a way. But it's a fact of that kind of operation, right? You have to do those things if you want to promote people. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think there are a lot of challenges with OWASP as a foundation. I think the communication on email lists in particular has been really frustrating. When I ran for the board, people were like, why do you even want to be part of OWASP? Like, it's so toxic, right? And so we've been trying to retire those lists. That's on the near term agenda to like get those lists gone and be able to use Discus or Discord or one of the conversational platforms where things can be more moderated. You know, if you look at Slack, for example, it's actually much more. The OWASP Slack is much more, I think.
Like personable, they show decor.
Personable. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, I mean, I've been on this. I'm on the project lead list, and I'm just like, because this is the thing is, when I had mentioned the last director stepping down, and like talking to, and I mentioned the is it possible, or I had asked, is it the challenge of the job? Part of that was reading those mailing lists. I'm like, I don't want to deal with that shit. I don't know. It's not even that directed at me. I look at my phone, and I'm just like, are you kidding me, people? Like. There's Matt. When Matt was on here, he said there was six of you running a global organization. I'm like, y'all think that's gonna, like, give some benefit of the doubt? I don't know, and at least try to be polite to each other.
Well, I think it's interesting because on the positive side, I think a lot of the community think that the foundation is like much bigger and more powerful than it is. Right? The downside of that is that they may be disappointed more often than they should be, right? Because they expect us to be able to turn around a payment quickly, right? And what we've tried to do is to sort of build in, okay, we've got reasonable processes so that those things are predictable and we can explain how they work, right? And so it's fair at the very least, right? But we don't necessarily expect a day turnaround for everything. You know what I mean? And I mean, I'm not going to say there haven't been challenges, Ken. Like there definitely have, but I think the majority of the people that work with OWASP are really sort of thrilled to see the community grow. And when we go to an event, like you go to AppSec USA, like the people who are part of the foundation are just kind of in awe of the community. It's like we look around and we're like, these people are amazing. Like Travis, I mean, and the whole group that ran AppSec, I mean, it's just amazing.
I mean, these people are, there's a lot of people volunteering to keep this stuff going, and they care a lot. So you're right. Like there's even, and like for what I said, and honestly, I meant it. Like it's good. I feel like it's good that you continue to continue taking a little bit of risk, right? Like continue shaking things up a little bit. That's how change, positive change can occur. So
yeah. Well, it's funny because we're a lot of us are in security, right? So we get obsessed with compliance. And one of my things is I really wish we would spend less time talking about compliance and more time talking about, funding strategic projects or something like that. But it's hard, you have to do both. Anyway, I'll stop talking about OWASP, but it is something I'm obviously passionate about. I'm thrilled to be, finishing out my second term. It's been a really good experience. I appreciate what the community's brought in so many ways, and both of you are included in that.
Well, yeah. So, now that you're wrapping that up, you're going to have all this spare time, right? It's not like you're running a company or something. What's next? And what's on your horizon, both with the company and with yourself?
So it's a great question. So from an OWASP perspective, I will certainly be diving into some projects. I'm not sure. Certainly some Glue. I'll get to spend some time on Glue. I think it's likely, I have a couple ideas like that dashboard we just talked about. I've been talking with someone who I met at AppSec USA about a core sort of unit test framework where you could sort of easily write tests that show security issues and have that be like a common platform where a lot of that is like out of the box, ready to go, so that you could I've always wanted to deliver pen test findings as like unit tests.
Yeah.
I don't see that as being practical, but I'd like to explore that a little bit.
Seth would love that idea. He's big into unit tests.
I am. Pen tester, they're just glorified QA testers. But yeah, okay.
Maybe we can rope you in to help with that. Then that's perfect.
We should talk, but the stuff that I have written is in Python. I'll just fair warning. So
I'm not a language snob. I like all languages except ones that have space where it has meaning.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Like I said, I've got to move to Go now, so
Go drives me crazy because all the libraries live in that home directory. I'm like, well, how do you do anything? Like, I like to have a directory with my project in it, and all the dependencies are under my project folder. I don't want my home directory to have all my Go stuff. Like, that drives me nuts.
hey,
we've talked at length about other issues with Go, like pulling directly. I think we talked about in our secure coding course. We talked about the fact that Go pulls directly from GitHub. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, GitHub's great, don't get me wrong.
No one would ever do anything malicious there, right?
Yeah, nobody ever takes over a project namespace and totally redirects people to their own, or not redirects, takes over that namespace and just has people download their own stuff. That's never happened, right?
That's never. Wait, I seem to remember something, but yeah.
There was a nasty thread about it.
Yeah.
So one of the fun things, just to finish answering your question, Seth, one of the fun things about running a company is, we're basically a services funded company that's bootstrapping to do products, right? So we try different products. We have a cloud security product now, which is basically like checking a bunch of AWS security configurations. We probably will not work on that for much longer, right? We'll either sell it or kill it or something, right? We'll pick up and do something next, right? Maybe we'll do, I've wanted for a long time to explore the idea of using AI to reduce to categorize false positives. Like, we have plenty of learning data for false positives.
Yes. No, and if you don't, I hear Fortify is quite good at generating those. Yeah.
Let's not be too bad. I think most tools generate a fair amount of it.
Oh yeah.
Oops, I put it in the wrong box, but I'm putting the link to JASP, by the way, into the chat.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And the good thing is we just have fun, right? Like we're a bunch of developers. We work together. We try to solve new problems. We geek out during the day about what the new thing is and writing code in some new thing. And so we really enjoy that angle. We're not necessarily the best at it. We're not the worst at it. We have a lot of fun doing it. And so that's what I'm looking forward to.
Cool. Good.
Yeah, I did want to ask you, because you put it, well, sorry, Seth, did you have a question that
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, well, I was just going to ask, because I kind of curious, like what are some of the biggest challenges of running your own small business that, because this is something I don't think we ask a lot of people this, Seth, but I think that we have the rare opportunity where we can ask someone this. So what are some of the challenges of running a smaller business? Or
how many employees
just a business in general, startup kind of, yeah.
So we're about 6 people right now. We were about 20 last year, to just give you an idea. So it's like a little up and down. So that's one challenge. You kind of have to be able to roll with the ups and downs. I don't think the infrastructure part is as hard as a lot of people do. We use JustWorks for a PEO. We use QuickBooks for all our accounting. That stuff is actually stuff you can learn and get help with. So that part isn't so hard. I think one of the hardest things is selling. So I'll tell people, I think I told someone today, I can walk into a new client or a new prospect and sell them consulting very easily because they're interested in me and we can talk through a solution. And I mean, I don't win every time, but I know what I'm talking about mostly. So it works out, right? Selling a product is a whole different thing. Selling is a whole different thing. Thinking about who needs something that you have, how you market it, how you get the message out there. We've paid companies to do marketing campaigns for JASP, for example, that turned out to be a total, we basically, I don't want to say we threw that money away, that sounds too harsh, but we basically didn't get it out of it, right? We spent, easily 10 grand on a very small marketing campaign, just gone, right?
And there's always these marketing companies and sales, mostly marketing, but they're these SEO experts, or they're running campaigns or whatever the case is, and they will gladly take your money and provide no results. It's very hard to especially with what I'd imagine it being more of a niche sort of product, right? That being security in general being difficult to market and get it out to the right people.
But in a way, that's the hardest thing. What you just said actually captured one of the hardest things, which is not overvaluing the engineering and undervaluing the sales. So this company, I think, was perfectly competent. We just failed in that campaign, right? I'm not saying they did a perfect job, but they did a reasonable job. and we failed. Like we basically had campaigns to get people to click through and try. I mean, why wouldn't you try a free cloud security product? It's going to help you find cloud issues. Like why wouldn't you do that? Is anybody using AWS? I don't know. Like,
yeah, the market should be there, right?
Like there's a huge market for that. Like we know and we built it because we were doing that work for clients. So we know they need it, right? But unless you can convince someone to click, you can't win that, right? Like you can't even get a chance to win it if you can't get them to click through. And a lot of what we struggle with is framing things in superior engineering terms or technical terms or so forth, where like what matters isn't how good the tool is. It matters like how much money am I going to save? What's it going to give me, right?
Are you SOC 2 compliant? Are you compliant with our requirements?
We're testing out an idea that I think is kind of interesting, which we're running at securityprogram.io, where you basically, because we've had this experience with a couple of clients where there's startups, somebody wants to either invest in them or buy their product, but they need to have a good security story to be able to do that. And we're like, well, the amount of money you have is not worth, like you could spend 10 grand and get a pen test, like a very short pen test. And like, but that's not really what you need, right? Like you need to stop and think about like, well, what data do you have? What regulations do you need to be worried about, right? Like, but those are easy conversation things to have. We're like, can we put that in an app? Right? Like, we'll give you like the first baby step in an app. And the selling, like the lead there is, hey, like you're unlocking business. It's a totally different message than you have better cloud security. Going all the way back to something you mentioned earlier with Justin Collins' Brakeman tool, right? People used it partly because it was free and open.
Right. And easy to download and install and run. Yeah, right. Free and easy. One
of the sort of defining quintessential problems of building tools for developers is like, other than AWS, they don't pay for shit. Sorry.
Oh yeah, it's not.
I hope we didn't escalate beyond the explicit zone. I was trying to avoid that.
No,
we're good so far.
Yeah, well, whatever. Don't worry. I don't care. Maybe. Maybe someone does. I don't care. This is our fucking podcast. We'll do what we want. But anyway, so moving past that. So I was going to mention though that like it's kind of funny that you talk about startups in 10,000 because like I know Seth and I have seen that where a company was like all in on spending like $30,000 on like AppSec work and a cloud security review and all that. And it's like, cool. Did you guys ever install badge readers? Like, did you like, are you still using that crappy set of wireless routers that are like, they've all get their web enabled or whatever, like getting the basics right. And, that sort of takes priority over the 30,000 or the 10,000 or whatever, pen test that they're trying to get. So
right. That's a hard line to walk into, right? With a business though, I like what you're doing with the securityprogram.io, right? Because you're taking it back to the basics rather than just, hey, we offer developer security, so that's what we're going to sell you. I mean, I find that as a consultant, that's hard because I walk in and you see those other problems and you're like, guys, right? Like, I would love to take your 30 grand, but honestly, you should be, you need a security person first, right? You've got to be able to consume what I'm going to give you, right? If I give you a bunch of findings and it doesn't change your life, I haven't done you any good. Right. Yeah.
100% agree with that stuff, man. Maybe we can work together sometime.
Yeah, we should. We definitely should. There's always work. It's Q4, so let's talk.
You're busy.
Yeah. So we're all busy. You know what I mean? But no. Yeah. It's just a hard problem that I don't think anybody's got a good solution for yet. I know we had Manico on and he was talking about his utopian framework that, will not let developers code insecurely and we're going to get there eventually. I'm a little skeptical. Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Manico is one of my favorite people in a lot of ways. Like he's a great inspirational dude. And I've heard that whole line. And I think there are grains of truth to it for some companies, right? If you're using Spring, you're probably getting more secure every release because they're adding a little feature here, a little feature here. Their defaults for like security headers are better.
Yep.
But like what's actually happening is people are like, you know what? Spring's too old and slow. I want to use Juice. I'm going to use this other thing. I'm going to use Scala. I'm going to use, and that's one of the great things about being a developer is that you get to choose and try these new things and use new technology, right? So the idea that like we're going to get to this like increasingly evolved framework that just does security for us, I think is maybe, I don't know if I agree with that. That's where it's going to go.
Come on! I want you to call Manico out as naive, so I can.
We should have a debate. You guys should have us back, and we can have a debate about this.
I tell you, I've been watching Manico on Twitter. He's been debating people like he's had a few good ones over the last couple of weeks that were interesting to follow.
Yeah.
I can't remember any of them because I can't remember anything, but yeah.
No, that's how it. Yeah, I mean, Manico does like his discussions, right? You know, for sure. But he does. I mean, he brings up some good points in that. But again, when we had him on, I did tell him it was utopian, and it's great to think that. And if you work at Microsoft / GitHub, maybe you have the ability to do that. But in most startups, the developers are going to come in and they're going to pick the new shiny, and that's what they're going to use because that's what they're excited to use. And most likely it's not going to have security built into it.
Don't be jealous of my discounted Xbox.
Elixir and Phoenix is my most recent cool thing I've been playing with, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, nice.
Who gets to do that? I mean,
and Erlang's pretty cool, right? But yeah, and that's just it. There's so many new languages and there's so much that's out there to learn. We had Stefan on last week talking about some of that stuff, and I just don't see the utopia happening anytime soon. I mean, within our like career lifespan, security is always going to be a thing.
Unless AI is writing all the code.
Oh yeah. AI would never make a mistake, right?
I think we'd have bigger problems to worry about at that point than security. Like, Skynet.
Oh, so we're going straight from AI to Skynet. That's what's going to happen.
Yep. That's always where it always goes, man. That's where it always goes. Sorry, I'm trying to look at. I've still been looking up, trying to find these Jim Manico threads that were really interesting.
Cool.
But if I find them, I'll post links.
Well, like we said, Matt, I mean, we've been going for a good hour, a little bit over that at this point. Kind of tell us what your like number one, any conferences or talks that you have planned coming up?
So, it's interesting. I saw you absolutely prepped me for this question, but I don't have any talks coming up and have not figured out any conferences to go to either. I feel like, and as much as I'm deeply invested in OWASP and AppSec Cali is amazing, I'm sort of like, I could maybe take a break. It'll be weird. So we'll figure that out. I think, I don't know, maybe my style will be to go find some developer conferences to talk at. See if I can't do that. I don't know.
Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, we'll obviously post your Twitter handle. If people want to interact with you, they can do it through that, or the OWASP Slack. Apparently, right? I'm pretty sure you're on there.
I am on there.
Are you going to be at AppSec Cali at all?
No, I don't think so. Unfortunately.
Cool.
So
that's okay.
I do feel like I have a fun disclosure that I need to make to you, Ken. It's the end of the podcast, right? It's the end of the podcast, so I can say this, right?
Yep.
So I had this surprise GitHub topic, which you obviously avoided.
Which was the surprise
because you're a responsible person. But I do feel like I need to tell you that I'm like a little bit in awe of you because I got denied a job at GitHub at one point in time because I was not technical enough. So,
oh my God,
kudos to you. That's the surprise GitHub topic.
Oh.
So back when I first started the company, I was like, wow, you know what would be a great place to work? And I'm really not just trying to pump you up here, but it was like, what would be a great place to work? GitHub. How could you impact developers better than working at GitHub? That's awesome. And I got into the interview process. I was doing the live coding exercise with somebody, and we were like in the chat bot, doing this thing, doing that thing, using Qbot, and I don't know, it was a long time ago. It was probably 2013 or 2012. And there was it was pretty. Go ahead.
Were you going for security or for engineering? Because security now AppSec doesn't have a live coding session. It's a takeaway code, or it's like two different sets of homework for interviewing.
It was. I don't think it was as separated at that time. It was still flat organization. Like I was talking to, and the people there are awesome. Like I know Ben and Scott, and like those guys are awesome. But I was like live coding with some engineer who was asking me about like, active record modeling when you have like degrees of, relationships, and how do you lazily load these things? And I'm like, well, shoot, if it were Java, I would actually know the answer to this. But like in active record, I don't know the answer, and I was like, oh man.
No, don't feel bad. I'm fairly certain I wouldn't have done well in their just straight up engineering questions. So
I don't doubt
very AppSec, just fine vols type of something I'm very comfortable with. So
take the praise, man. Take the praise. Take the praise.
I'll take it. Thanks. But yeah, no, the engineers that we work with, they are very, very. Actually, was I saying this to Seth or someone? Seth, did I say it to you, or maybe it was somebody else? Where I was talking about like, I just do the the dumb this looks bad, throw it over the fence type deal, and someone actually intelligent gets it going. I don't know. I swear I said that somewhere today. Maybe it was in the Absolute AppSec.
Slack. Yeah, it was in like the Absolute AppSec channel. I think you were talking about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
they actually solve the problems.
Yeah, yeah, those hard problems.
I like to measure the success of a client, or like the good relationship with a client is like I can give them pull requests that they accept that are fixes. Like to me, that's like, okay, we're doing it right. Not that but it was clear that this interview did not go that way.
No, I'll tell you what. When we do interviews, I don't know. Like I know it's gotten more formalized, basically. So before it was like pretty weird. But, yeah.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I meant to make you look good. Is what I meant.
Oh well, no, I totally appreciate it. Yeah, no,
he always looks good. Don't worry about it, right? Yeah.
Good call.
By the way,
there's the Christmas sweater.
Yeah, exactly. I got to up our game.
With a unicorn.
You need an ugly sweater, Seth.
I'll see what I can
call
find.
A sweater.
That's where we're at tonight. I see how it is. Two Rubyists in a room, and this is what happens.
If we go long enough. So I did want to point out that a couple things. So I guess Dave Corsi, we gotta have Corsi on actually. I'll reach out to you, Corsi. So I guess he was saying you can vendor, with Go, and he put a link in there. But he did want to, if you have a sort of strategy for application inventory in a larger organization, or if you've seen anything like work, anything like that you can think of.
Great question. So I'll be pretty blunt about this, and I'm pretty blunt in general. I thought I had a really good answer to this, and I talked to a company that I can't probably say who it was, and they were like probing, like, hey Matt, what have you done here? And it was nowhere near cool enough for what they wanted. So there's ways to do inventory that are, way ahead of the curve. The best things I've seen work practically, bigger companies tend to have their own app actually for doing inventory. So, typically you sort of start in a spreadsheet or just a list of GitHub repos in one organization, and then it kind of graduates into, well, we've also got Bitbucket. I know that's a evil word, right? I'm just kidding.
No, that's fine. Some people like to use inferior tools, and that's bless them.
right? Or we've got, we've bought these companies, and so we've got different source repos, right? Like there's all kinds of reasons why one organization doesn't actually work for an inventory. So then you end up automating some piece of that, right? And you end up building like a service registry so that everybody knows how to talk to each other, which has benefits not just from a security perspective, but from a dev perspective. And the cases where I've seen this work the best, the security information gets integrated with the dev information. So we know who the API is, we know where the API docs are, we know who's on call for it, we know where the code is, we know how to contact the team. We also know what the security properties of that service are, like when it was last tested, does it process PII, whatever, right? Like you can sort of integrate that information right into your registry. So, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting idea of like whether you could write a pretty simple inventory app and do that as an OWASP project. That seems like a possible thing to do. Because the reality is it's like a single table with an API. It's not like a super complicated piece. The hard piece is like how you get that data in, right? Do you have something that's just polling GitHub orgs and you just like build out pieces that push to the service? Again, I think some companies have, they want to build their inventory from Meso, so they want to build their inventory from Artifactory, or they want to build, like there are different places, like if you're running code you bought instead of code you built, then you need to like integrate to different places to know what your inventory actually is. And those are not problems that I think there's an easy solution to. You basically have to build your own automation as far as I know right now. So I don't have a great answer for that.
No, I see people build their own. I mean, that's what I've seen is like people building their own tooling. Or like you said, piggybacking off like what Ops has already built to track just like not necessarily inventory, but kind of inventory, like more of like stats on the applications they've deployed and like have code that you actually can pull in or data from their code that you can pull in. But yeah, like it's still custom even at that point, right?
Well, and there's an interesting idea of whether you could build an inventory with a simple dashboard and have that be that could be an OWASP project, right? Where it's not opinionated about what tools you're using or how you're storing your code or anything else. It's just those pieces. And again, I'm not saying everything should be OWASP, but just.
So what you're saying is Dave Corsi should start an OWASP project that is targeted to build an application inventory in an automated fashion for organizations. Dave, you're on that, right?
Yeah. I'll help. I'll totally help.
It's definitely an unsolved problem, right? Like I see it in all the organizations I walk into, exactly what you're saying there. They've acquired some company, so half of the apps live in one place, half live somewhere else, and then you've got a couple people that are spinning up stuff in AWS or whatever else, and they're going on the rogue. So it's hard to actually solve and figure out where everything lives and who's responsible for it. But has been for years.
We had in a previous version of JASP, we had the idea of running an AppSec program through the application where we would run the inventory for you, and it would be tiering would be baked in, right? Like, so you know where to focus your energy, and like your development of which controls apply at which tier would be baked in, so that you could say, oh, well, if it's a tier 1 app, we have to do X, Y, and Z. We're doing code review, pen test, stack analysis, whatever else, right? If it's a tier 3 app, we're just going to do maybe one of those, right? And you can kind of map out what your program looks like and costs over a period of time based on knowing what your apps look like and who your vendors are and how often you're going to do the work and whatever. And we just realized that anybody who has a company that's big enough to have that kind of inventory has people that are doing that work already, that are deeply invested in doing that job, and that app doesn't help them because they've got their opinionated way of solving the problems. But maybe there's an opportunity for like a more open approach where we're not opinionated, right? And we're just like, here's a inventory service, dump stuff in it, right? Here's a GUI on top. You can see what's in it, right? But you don't have to we're not trying to help run your program. You just get a building block.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Corsi, you're on the hook now. So we'll follow up with you next week.
I've got an action item with you too, Seth, though, so watch out.
Sweet. All right. Hit me up. That's all good. Give me a couple of weeks to, get out from underneath Q4 and then we'll talk. So
then it'll just be Q1 and there'll be more work.
Yeah. Well, there's always more work, right? But if it's fun, that's the question. So that's the priority level right now. Is it fun? Well, if it's not, then it gets a lower priority. So.
Nice.
Well, good. Yeah, Matt, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Brother.
Thank you for
It's been a
having
good
me.
discussion.
Appreciate your time.
And if you're interested, we'd love to have you back on again. Sometime in the future, sometime in season 2, I guess, because 2019 is going to be season 2, right, Ken?
Yes, it is on It'll have been a year since our first episode, I think on January 8th. So we're not far away from that.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thanks. Appreciate it. We keep getting interesting folks like you to actually agree to come on this. So it's
actually talk to us. So it's all good.
One of the nice benefits of being on the board has been I got to meet a lot of people. If you ever want an intro or you want to, I'm sure you can go find people and you have lots of people that you already know. But if you're ever like, hey, I wonder if this guy would come on, I'd be very happy to try to facilitate.
Yeah, we'll definitely take you up on that. I mean, it's cool for us because we get to, because this is not like, this is just, I mean, clearly I'm in this room that it's a very clearly informal podcast. So it's kind of nice. We can ask the questions that we want to know. It's always fun to just have these conversations with folks like yourself. So appreciate the offer. We'll definitely take you up on it. And thanks for coming on. Like it was really a good talk. It's really cool. The funny thing is I want to keep going, but I know we gotta. People are
gonna be like, why are you doing an hour and a half podcast? So
yeah, eventually it's gonna have to. Seth, I have a feeling it's gonna get longer, but whatever.
You can always
We're just gonna have to
two.
cut people off, right? Yeah.
Yeah, or like you said, part 2.
Yeah. We'll start doing more part 2s, I'm sure, as things progress. We've had a couple people on a few times, but
hey, I like the t-shirt.
Hey, oh yeah, that's right. Absolute AppSec t-shirts are in. So
hey, I want one
Matt,
of those.
send us over your shipping details, and we'll send one to you. Anybody that's been on, we're going to start shipping them out here. Hopefully, I'll start it this next week. Me and Ken are going to start following up with people and send some.
You can't be a security guy unless you wear black t-shirts, right? So I might
exactly.
be able to.
I got my Cactus Con one on, so there you go.
Sweet. Yeah.
This is ThoughtCon Chicago.
Sweet.
Nice.
Very good.
Nice. Free t-shirts are the best t-shirts.
Yep, exactly.
Well,
thanks,
but yeah. We'll get your shirt size and your address and ship them on out. And by the way, this is the first time I'm actually seeing this shirt. That's why
they really just came in, like 2 or 3 days ago. So
can you send mine first and then his after?
Yeah, I definitely can.
Everybody will get theirs before me.
Ken wants one? No, I don't think he gets it.
For all the crap episodes, I don't deserve a t-shirt before everyone else.
Awesome. All right, guys.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it, Matt. Still, Ken and I will be at AppSec Cali. If you haven't heard, we'll be giving our secure code training there. If you're interested, sign up. Otherwise, we'll see everybody online on Twitter and Slack. Hit us up if you've got any questions. But thanks again to Matt Konda for joining us. Thanks, Ken, for hosting. And we'll talk to everybody next week.
Have a good night.